Good morning. I'm filling in for Gary right now on WHTC because I have Juanita Bocanegra with me visiting. Can you hear me, Juanita?
I can. Good morning, Peggy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Hope you are too.
Yeah, you're doing great. I listened to the interview you did with Gary recently, and I was just wondering, oh, hold on one second. Gary, is this recording? He's in the room. Oh, so we're already recording. Okay. I just want to make sure because I didn't see the little light there. So one thing, Gary and you talked a little bit about your background, coming here as an only child, being an immigrant, working as or your parents were migrant workers. I'm wondering kind of more in the future, here you are, you've got 2 kids, you've been in the community for a few decades, you're still pretty young though.
Thank you.
Can you tell me some of the people who along the way have either influenced you or mentored you in your outlook as an attorney, either civil or defense or prosecutor?
Yes. So you want me to talk about mentors and those big influencers in my life?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, first and foremost, God. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't be able to accomplish anything without God's blessing. So all the glory to Him. Next to that, my parents are probably my greatest influencers just because they've been my greatest cheerleaders. They've made the biggest sacrifices to get me where I am. And then along the lines, I have had several cheerleaders. People who know me have heard me talk about my 5th grade teacher, Frank Cry, who is now at Freedom Village, and he was just here visiting with me last week. We still stay in touch. We have coffee, lunch once in a while. Unfortunately, right now, COVID has kind of put a stop on that, but he did come to visit. He was my 5th grade teacher. He taught me that even though I'm a migrant, in the minority, that I had potential, that I could accomplish great things, and to believe in myself. And he turned that student from being an average student, B's, couple A's here and there, and some C's, into a straight A student. So it all started with Frank Cry. In middle school, I had Dale Conklin, who was I had him for both 6th and 7th grade. We had, if you recall, and I think this is still the way it's done, different teachers for different periods.
Just to let you know, I grew up on the other side of the state, but I had a very similar experience to you with them trying to teach us about middle school when we were in 5th and 6th grade, so we changed classes. So you were saying.
Yes. So Dale Conklin was my English teacher in middle school. And before entering middle school, I remember conversations among the students, both minority students as well as Caucasian friends, saying, Mr. Conklin is really mean and he's racist and you just need to prepare for that. Nothing could have been further from the truth. Dale Conklin had a big heart. He was strict. He demanded more. If he thought you could give more, he demanded more. But he did that with all his students, regardless of ethnic background or color of skin. He and I became very close. And Mr. Conklin mentored me and coached me through a national writing competition that actually, that I won, and I ended up going to NASA for a week. First time I got on a plane, first time I left my parents, but it was thanks to the extra time he took with me outside of class that I was able to experience that. I also recall him taking time off, his own personal time, and using his own money to drive me to Lansing along with another teacher to receive some recognitions and awards, because both of my parents were working in the fields and they were not able to accompany me during the day. So he did that all on his own. I stayed in touch with Dale Conklin as much as I could until he passed away, unfortunately.
I have to ask, what was that essay about that you won the trip to NASA for? What was your point of it, and what was like the main idea?
I have it somewhere at home and I should dig it up. If I remember correctly, it was somewhere along the lines about accomplishing great things and why do you think you can be whatever you want to be? Something along those lines.
And what was the tipping point with Mr. Conklin where you realized that the story you had been told before meeting him was not accurate? There had to have been a moment or something where you were like, This isn't really the same as what people said I'd experience.
He had a great big smile from day one. He told us what his expectations were from day one. I had no issue with that because thanks to Frank Cry from fifth grade, I had learned to demand more of myself and I expected more of myself. I was able to do all the assignments as he asked. So it wasn't that first day, and I don't know that there was ever like a blink and there it is, there's a moment. But as the class went on and as opportunities came up and he would take me aside and say, hey, Juanita, I think you should try this, or I think maybe you should consider this. I started to realize this guy is not racist at all. If anything, he just wants the best for his students, and he is very strict. And I was okay with it. I didn't have a problem, and I think that's why we developed a good friendship.
I'm guessing your parents were strict too. For obvious reasons, you're the only child, right? They wanted to make sure you were okay.
That is correct. I was very sheltered as a child. I had very strict parents because I had no siblings to distract their attention. So some kids would say, I bet you're spoiled because you're an only child. And it was quite the opposite. My parents demanded a lot. And I also put a lot of expectation on myself, thinking, I don't have any siblings that will come along, and if Juanita messes up, somebody else will make them proud. It's all on me. I either make them proud or I don't, but all their hopes lie in me. So I always felt that pressure and kind of that weight heavily on my shoulders. And I wasn't allowed to go out to the roller rink that used to be, it's still there on James Street, but back then that was a big hangout for all the kids. My parents didn't allow me to go there. I wasn't allowed to hang out with friends. I wasn't even allowed to go outside until the kitchen was clean and the floors were clean, because I had chores. And they said, it's not about the chore itself, it's about teaching responsibility. So yes, you're right, very, very strict.
And so I want to find out too, because I think what's really essential is that you mentioned you were kind of an average. And by the way, average is a C student, not a B student with some A's. That's that's sort of above average. But what was a tipping point in the teacher-student relationship with you and Frank Cry, where it sounds like he taught you how to be a student in a way because he helped you level up? What was that? What was the mechanics of that?
Don't know. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. It was just him believing in me and taking the time, and I wanted to make him proud. I wanted to prove to him and to prove to my parents I can do this. And if Frank Cry believed in me and he did it with such a big smile, then I thought, he's the teacher. So he sees what maybe I'm not seeing in myself. And if he says I can do it, then I'm sure I can do it, or he wouldn't be telling me that. You have to remember this was fifth grade, so there wasn't a whole lot of sophisticated thought going into it. I was just a young kid trying to make the teacher proud and to say, yes, I can do this for you.
Right, and some teachers do it in a more oppositional way, but it sounds like yours was very much supportive and uplifting. You are in your role today. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because one thing that I've heard from Al Dannenberg, the county commissioner, is that you are now not just an assistant prosecuting attorney who's running for a judgeship. You've also been educating people that you work with throughout the county about diversity. And I'm not sure exactly how active your role has been in that, but he has just sung your praises about how you have made him really aware of things that he never thought about as a white male who grew up in Zealand.
Oh, wow. I had no idea that I had caused that kind of impression on Al. I'm glad that sharing my experiences has been a positive thing for him. But before we leave the teachers, I would be remiss if I don't mention Christy Bruns. I have to mention her. She was my high school teacher, math high school teacher, and she would send me her assignments when I was in pre-calc and calc. She'd mail me assignments every week to Texas when I would leave so that I would not fall behind in the class. And again, Christy and I meet 2 or 3 times a year. Lately, we've been meeting more often, usually her birthday, my birthday, and some other time. She has been one of my biggest cheerleaders through this campaign. She gathered the most amount of signatures by far of any of my volunteers. So Frank Cry, Dale Conklin, Christy Bruns turned my life around.
And can you just speak to like women who support women? Because I don't know what your teacher makeup was. I always had almost all my teachers in elementary and middle school were female. It wasn't until I got into like 8th, 9th, 10th grade that I had male teachers. I don't know why, it just kind of worked out that way. But it's different when you have a woman at the front of the classroom and you're a girl who's trying. I mean, there's studies that show that, I mean, you were talking about being in pre-calc, studies show that girls in 4th and 5th grade, when they start going through puberty, tend to lag in things that make them seem, I'm doing air quotes, folks, smart, like math, like science, like those kinds of things. And they tend to step back because there's this cultural thing, and I think this is through many cultures, where women aren't supposed to be smarter than men. So, but obviously you had 2 strong male figures, well, 3 counting your dad, but in schools you had strong male figures who were saying you can do it and being supportive. What was there anything in particular that Christy Bunce did to help you understand that, yes, you're a woman in a world that's largely a man's world, or certainly has been historically, and did she teach you anything as far as making your way through a largely male world?
I don't know that it was with regard to being a woman in a largely male world, especially knowing my aspirations to be an attorney and talk about a male-dominated field. The legal field is still very much male-dominated, even though you're seeing more and more women attorneys every day. She taught me more the going the extra mile and doing something for someone without expecting anything in return. I don't know if she really thought I would do every assignment that she would mail me to Texas. I was going to school full-time in Texas, and then I would come home and there would be this large envelope waiting for me. So I don't know if it was, here, look at this, just kind of glance it over, or if she thought I would actually do it. I was actually doing the assignments. Sometimes I would mail them back. Sometimes I would just bring stacks of envelopes back with me. And then when I would get back, she would take the time to catch me up. So I think more than anything, it was her dedication, her passion as a teacher, and her dedication to the students that taught me that's the kind of person I want to be when I grow up. I want to be able to give back. And so the 3 teachers taught me more to give back to the community. It taught me that it makes a difference. You really do touch somebody's life, and you can make a huge difference in someone's life by just giving a little bit of your time. So it would be more the community involvement that I owe to them.
And you are very involved in the community. I mean, one thing I noticed, because I was stalking you online, I know a little bit about you because I remember when you got the job as the assistant prosecutor, and I covered your campaign announcement. And I actually attended a speech you did on Cesar Chavez Day, like at Hope College. How long ago was that?
Oh gosh, that has to have been at least 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, so eons ago, it seems like now. But here you are, you've got a family and you're very busy, but at the same time, you're a Community Foundation trustee, you're on the State Hispanic Latino Commission, you're the secretary of that board, you're on a board for Holland Hospital, you're on Lakeshore Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, and the Greater Holland Area Women Who Care. And aren't you also Women of Color Who Give? Are you in that group also?
Women of Color Who Give, 100 Women Who Care, the Holland Symphony Orchestra. So the Community Foundation and LADSV, the Lakeshore Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, those are boards that I was formerly on. Community Foundation has been very close to my heart. That was the first big board that I served on. I learned a lot. I grew a lot when I was on that board, and I did my 3 full terms. And at the end of the 9 years, they're 3 3-year terms. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I had to. It was time for somebody else to have an opportunity to serve with such a great organization. So I no longer serve on that board. When I was there, I did chair the distribution committee. And that was very special to me because many of the organizations that applied for grants to the Community Foundation were organizations that had touched my life personally when I was a migrant child. So I had been on the receiving end, and it was such a gratifying feeling to now be reviewing grant applications and be able to discuss that with my colleagues and other board members and be able to give back to those organizations thanks to the philanthropy of such great donors that we have in the Holland Zeeland area.
And you probably brought some insights to all of those boards because of your life history. I mean, I grew up in a middle-class white suburb of Detroit. Wasn't till I worked in a factory when I left journalism to like write a novel or whatever. I got some real insights into and I did some volunteering here too, about the disconnect between even middle-class people and people who live in poverty. I mean, I don't know that you lived in poverty per se, but that had to be a hard life as a only child of a migrant couple, right?
Right. So I never felt like we were poor, but looking back, we were definitely poor. We wouldn't have been migrants otherwise. Why would you leave your home to travel to other states to pick fruits and vegetables and work with evergreen plants, which is what my parents did. I was an only child, so my parents were able to provide for me more than my friends were able to be provided for by their parents, who had 4 or 5 siblings. And like I said, my parents made great sacrifices for me, but to kind of shine some light on that, when I was in middle school, early high school, Guess jeans were the rave. And when I looked at the sticker price for a pair of Guess jeans that I really wanted, because many of my friends were wearing those, they were like almost $100. And that was just, to me, out of reach. I never asked my parents for a pair of Guess jeans. I'm positive that had I asked, they would have made the sacrifice and they would have bought me a pair of Guess jeans so that their only daughter didn't feel left out. But I saw that as a very material thing. It was something that I wanted. I recognized early on that it wasn't a need. And when I did the math, I knew that it would take more than 2 days worth of my parents working out in the fields, getting up at 4 in the morning, coming home after 6, working in the rain, in the cold, in the heat, depending on the weather, so that I could have a pair of Guess jeans. And I didn't think that was fair. My first pair of Guess jeans I bought at a garage sale. So yes, when I look back, we really didn't have a lot, but I had a very happy childhood. I didn't feel deprived. I didn't feel like we were poor. Compare that to the lifestyle that my husband and I have been able to give our children. And you're right. My kids are very privileged. They may not realize it now, but hopefully they realize it one day. It's different when you have worked out in the fields. I have, picked blueberries, I've picked apples, I've picked oranges, I've worked with the evergreen plants, I've dug up trees, I've done all of that. I've flicked burgers, I've made fries at McDonald's. That all gives you a different perspective on life, and you learn to appreciate things when you have to work for them.
Well, and you also have had access again to the spectrum of living scales, basically, certainly in West Michigan. And I wonder how you what from that you bring to your understanding as a prosecutor, and what you'll bring to the judge's seat should you be elected. And I know you have one opponent. There's no primary. You're running on November 3rd. What insights do you think you're going to bring when you sit down at the bench?
I think my life experiences, my bilingual and bicultural background aside, just my life experiences alone, having worked my way from the bottom up, gives me a different lens to view things, to analyze things. I think that I can bring a lot of empathy to the bench. I can identify with those individuals. I don't think we have a lot of bad individuals in this area or in Ottawa County. I think we have a lot of individuals who keep making the same mistake over and over again, and some of them are just not willing to learn from those mistakes. I think it gives me also the perspective of, I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to not have much economically. And I also don't take a lot of excuses from individuals that I work with. I've been there, so I know what can and cannot be done with very limited means when you just set your mind to it and you work hard, and you don't think that you're above any job. As a prosecutor, I unfortunately have met with individuals who have said, I cannot pay those fines and costs, or I cannot pay that restitution to that victim because I don't have a job. And when I ask them, why don't you have a job? They say, because I can't find anything. You can't drive a mile in Holland, even before this current situation that we're in, without seeing a now hiring sign. A couple of times I've been told I have a college education. I can't work at a store stocking shelves. I can't flip burgers. To me, that is a little bit insulting because I have done all of that, and I don't think there's any shame in doing all of that. When you do what you need to do to survive, as long as it's an honest, an honest living, you don't need to steal. You don't need to do any of those other things. On the other hand, I am also very aware of our mental health crisis and individuals who are stealing because they have mental health issues or they have substance abuse issues. I think I can bring empathy to that, and I think I can balance that with a reasonable expectation of you do your part and we'll do what we can. We'll do our part to get you through it. I think we owe it to those individuals who are willing to try to make a change, to come alongside them and help them. We owe it to the community because it's a win-win. If those individuals can break those habits, they will have a better life and the community will have a better community member. So I can bring that understanding to the bench.
So the thing that's interesting too, you talk about that, I've covered the sobriety courts that they have here at the 58th District and also a Veterans Court graduation. Actually got to interview the judge in Lansing who, forgive me folks, his name, it's been a few years, I'm blanking on his name, but he started the Veterans Court because his dad was a troubled vet. And he told me this story in Lansing when I was there to cover the representative's DUI case over there. But he was telling me about this, and I thought it was so interesting that justice seems to be shifting a little bit to accommodate, I'm 62, so the justice that I saw as a kid, and I was never arrested or anything like that, but in covering courts, it was very cut and dried. This is what the state law allows. This is what the crime was. And now, I've seen Judge Jonas, assign people essays. You need to write 2 pages on this topic. And then sometimes she'd have them read them, or she would read them for people, because I think part of it was her background as an English teacher. And the other part of it is it's a cognitive development issue, that if you're writing things down, you gain an understanding. Do you see yourself being that kind of a judge who would assign an essay so that, as part of your probation, you have to, where do you see your creative ability as a judge coming to play in helping people get basically some traction or a toehold on living a law-abiding life where they're contributing to society?
Well, first of all, I have every intent, if I'm elected to the bench, to continue with sobriety court. Judge Jonas has asked me that. She's endorsing me, which is a huge honor to be endorsed by the person who you're seeking to replace on the bench. And that was one of the things that she asked me early on. She said, if you prevail, are you going to continue with sobriety court? Because I know that is a very special program to her. She was one of the first individuals who brought that to the state, and certainly who brought it here to Ottawa County. Yes, I have every intent of continuing that and of being able to speak down or speak to the individuals, not speak down to them, but speak with them from a sense of there's no shame in the disease that you're suffering. Let's see what we can do to come alongside and help you. Here are the expectations, here are the rules of the game. I will do my part. This is what I expect from you. And being able to speak to them from a perspective of, I'm not shaming you, I'm not looking down on you, regardless of your background. Unfortunately, many of the individuals that we deal with come from a low economic background. I remember when I was hired as a legal assistant many years ago for Hen Persinger, one of the things that I was told was, we knew you had worked out in the fields, and a lot of the individuals that we help will come here right after work in their work clothes, and we do not want them to feel less. We don't want them to feel shamed. We want them to feel welcome. So that's always been, kind of in the front of my mind. No individual deserves to be looked down because they look dirty after coming home from work. Sometimes we have individuals who show up in court and they're still wearing their work boots. Their clothes are dirty, and I'm okay with that. There's no shame in any of that. We all make mistakes. I think we're human. We have all done things that we're not proud of. It's about learning from those experiences and moving forward and becoming a better person because of those experiences. That's how we grow as human beings.
Well, and just briefly, one thing I know from being in the courtroom as a reporter is, sometimes there are tons of obstacles people have just physically getting to the space. I mean, they may not have a car, they may not be able to take time off work, all those kinds of things. I hate to do this. We've got like, I don't know, about a minute left. Is there anything I didn't ask you that in about 40 seconds you can answer? What question didn't I ask you that people should know about you?
Integrity, community service. I would say, I have a track record of my community involvement. I've been involved with the community and giving back for more than 20 years, before I went to law school, before I actually became an attorney, before I had any idea that I would someday be running for judge. I think that, they say pictures are worth a million words. I think looking at past actions is worth more than what I could tell you right now. This is what I want to do for the community. I think people should look at what I've already done for the community. I can tell you I will continue to do that, but don't believe me because I'm telling you that. Believe me because you can see what I've been doing for the past 20 years.
Because you've got a record, so to speak.
Because I have a record of it.
Well, Juanita Bocanegra, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney for Ottawa County Courts and running for the judgeship in the 58th District. Thank you so much. I'm going to try and hit the network here, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. It was nice of Gary to let me do this.
Thank you. It was great talking to you, Peggy.
You too.